Hi, welcome back to the Dylan Rounds case. Welcome if you're currently here in the live chat. I appreciate it. Now, as you saw, I did a smaller countdown timer this time round to ensure and enable that people were given a fair bit of time and are ready and waiting for this video to begin, as it is a very important one, sharing breaking news information regarding the Dylan Rounds case and what Candice Cooley has had to say just yesterday, okay? So I've summarised most of the important points that have come out from that interview. If you'd like to see the full interview video, okay, with the actual faces and talking and audio, then go over to Doug's channel, No Thanks, after watching this, okay? This video is intended to share the information with you so you get an idea, an understanding. I'll provide my own points and opinions and add-ons to some of these points, okay? So we can get to the bottom of them, see if there's any ties, connections, if anything's reinforced, if there's any contradictions, etc. Okay? So let's begin. Are you ready? Right. First, most important point. In the interview, Candice Cooley did say straight away that James Brenner, also known as Jim Brenner, has been trying to reach out to the Dylan Rounds family, the mother, the father, and others within the family. Brenner repeatedly calling from him in jail, making calls outwards to the family, okay? Very interesting that, because we've not heard of that before until now. The action itself really does stand out because it's making you think, why does Brenner want to reach out to the family? Is it because he's got information? Is it because he wants to taunt and mess around? From what Candice Cooley said, was Brenner isn't a master manipulator or master criminal. He doesn't have a criminal mind like that, of that standard. So there's probably more chances that he's reaching out to the family to provide possible information and maybe even whereabouts of where Dylan is at. And if not that, it could even be to apologise. Some of you might be wondering, that makes no sense. You know, Brenner, what he's done, acting violent, doing it in the past as well. Why now? Well, unless it's a form of guilt catching up on him psychologically. There's a lot going on in his mind because of Box Elder County dragging things out, the actual case and investigation. It's also dragging out, I guess, the potential conviction and case of Brenner himself. So he's waiting around as well. And maybe he just wants to get over and done with. That's why he's trying to phone up and say, I've got the information, here's the coordinates, or this is the name of the place I put Dylan. You know, there's any certain reasons to why potential or the criminals end up reaching out to family. You know, other times it might be to play games, but there are occasions where they're reaching out to apologise and maybe even provide information because it's got too much for them. I think an important thing you've got to take in mind is, even though Brenner can be violent, has a temper, may snap, heat at the moment, although he might have even, really hurt people. I don't know myself. If you know, feel free to list in the chat. Has Brenner ever killed anyone in the past? Yes or no? Or has he only hurt people to an extent? Because if he's never killed anyone before, this is a new experience, right? You know, sometimes you even get where people are fantasizing or wanting to know what it feels like to kill someone. And then when it happens, they get some kind of like sudden shock to the system, like a reality check, and they hate what they've done. That can happen, okay? With Brenner, most part of it, there's only been certain actions which led to certain consequences. I guess in this situation, stepping way over the line in terms of what he's potentially done, taking out someone, taking a life. And maybe he's realised that and thinking, oh God, oh no, what have I done? As well, you've got to try and understand kind of a relationship between Brenner and Dylan. Not so much that they're best friends or really close, but that they know each other in some way and have worked together. You know, some kind of memories, some kind of thoughts. Nothing too friendly, but, you know, just some kind of maybe mutual agreement with getting on with one another as time's gone on. Because it's been a couple of years they've been kind of close in proximity on the land, and in the past when working together on other farms. So, you know, with a bit of communication and cooperation at times, maybe that's, you know, possibility that Brenner is showing more remorse, possibly, to what he's done to Dylan in comparison to what he's done to other people in the past, mainly because of the actual act. In the past, it wasn't killing, it was just attacking, and that was it. But also, that, in a way, that kind of like relationship between the two, because they know each other. People in the past, Brenner might have hurt, might have been just a stranger, a random everyday person. There's no relating, there's no feelings, there's nothing. So, you see the situation? So that's the first big point. Brenner calling the Dylan Rounds family on multiple occasions. Now there's one problem, and it's the next point. The detective, one of them in Box Elder County, has not listened to the calls whatsoever. Now, I believe there's no like voicemail. Candice said they can't call Brenner. They can't, because he's in prison. It's only one way. Calls can be made outwards, but not inwards. It makes sense, I guess. So the detective could listen to the calls what Brenner has made towards the family members, because, you know, it might have audio of him confessing to something, Dylan's murder, confessing to knowing some other criminal out there possibly, confessing to the location of Dylan's remains. Very important information, and yet Box Elder County detective has not listened to any of the calls. That's not good. That's once again halting potential evidence, leads, important information. That's not good, is it? So you can leave your thoughts down below about what you think of Brenner calling the family and the detective not listening to Brenner's calls made outwards. What do you think it's all about? What do you think, and why do you think Brenner is calling Rounds family members? Let me know in the comment section, okay? Now, let's move on to the next point. And it's kind of tying on again with the whole calls visits with Brenner. Candice Cooley did say there was no proof that Brookie has visited Brenner. And as for screenshots, which may have been shown in previous streams, maybe on No Thanks and others, when Brookie has said, oh, I've got a screenshot, I've got an email of a visiting order with Brenner. From what Candice said, anyone can do that. You go on the website or the prison website, request some kind of order, visit order. You get, I guess, an email, maybe a confirmation, or like signing up to going, and that's what Brookie most likely did. Got the email, screenshotted it, and then used it to prove that she's going or she's gone, but in fact she hasn't ultimately, okay? So that kind of clears that up. As for Brenner himself, from what Candice Cooley has said, no one has visited Brenner. Never. Like a prison visit, okay? Is it a surprise? Not really. Someone like Don Hatley, you might have thought, oh, he would have visited Brenner, but after what we heard back then about Don Hatley grassing up Brenner about the .22 caliber rifle and storing guns, which I think thus led to the arrest of Brenner, I didn't expect Don to visit Brenner after that went on, because I don't think it would have gone down well, right? So that's that part to do with the prison situation and the calls. let's move on to the next important part, okay? This is just as important, if not even more, okay? So you remember about the whole key fob situation, how it was returned back? Well, it's kind of been reconstructed in the correct order, okay, of how things unraveled, okay? I will repeat this later on in the video if people join too late, okay? Day 1, I guess, of the search for Dylan, Candice Cooley said, on day 1, the boots were found near the dirt mound by search and rescue, okay? There we go. Day 2 was when Kurt Wadsworth called the family, called Candice, about Dylan supposedly being held hostage in Montello, and that you better get down here and, rescue him. That was day 2. Day 3. Dylan's pistol, the gun that was missing all that time, okay? Dylan's pistol on day 3 was returned back to the camper inside, and it was left on one of the seats, okay? The clip, also known as the magazine of the pistol, was taken out and placed by the side of the gun. Why? I don't know. DNA on the gun was not found. The gun was wiped clean. That's interesting, that. Because DNA wasn't found on it, and because it was cleaned after it was used, most likely that was the item used to take Dylan out. An effort was made with that item to get rid of any DNA so it wouldn't track back to the suspect, right? That does make sense. And if you're trying to ensure that there's no DNA on a certain object, then it reinforces the chances of that object being used at the scene of the crime, right? Pistol, maybe shooting Dylan, possibly. Could explain the blood found on Dylan's boot. Although it was just a droplet, there was blood found on Dylan's boot, okay? So, day 1, boots found. Day 2, they received the call from Kurt about Dylan supposedly being a hostage in Montello, which turned out to be a false call. Day 3, the pistol was returned with the clip, but taken out. Day 4, the key fob was placed back in the trailer, in the same spot where the gun was placed. Isn't that a bit weird, right? Very important. The key thing is, obviously, it was day 2 when they received the call from Kurt about Dylan being held hostage in Montello, and it was day 4 the key fob was placed back in the trailer of Dylan's. So it clearly shows there's no decoy going on. Previously, I was under the impression that the key fob returned on the same day when the call was made about Dylan being held in Montello hostage. But from what's just been read out just then, there's no link. It's happened on different days. So no decoy, no distraction, right? Does that make sense to you? Said you can leave your thoughts and reactions down below. So interesting. Now, we knew about the key fob earlier, but we didn't know about the pistol. Up until now, from back then up until like yesterday or the day before that, we're under the impression that the gun is still missing, and along with the phone, right? And I guess it's because some of that information couldn't be revealed up until now because of the whole investigation, the whole evidence situation. You don't want to ruin the case, right? You don't, because it messes it up. You don't get justice. But as said, with the way things have all gone, I think Candice have got to that point where she's like, well, this needs to be talked about. So that's all understandable to why certain things have been reserved and held back, right? But it's very strange. Just a simple fact that these key items which are associated with Dylan. Dylan's possessions were taken away in the beginning, I assume when Dylan was taken out, and they were returned, those items, later on, but not at the same time. That makes no sense. Why go to the trailer, whoever it is, most likely Jim Brenner, why go to Dylan's trailer to place the gun down first for it to be found and collected, and then to go back the next day and then to drop off the key fob like that so then they can collect it? Why not just take all the items down with you at the same time? Why is there a delay in days? It's like, are they playing some kind of game of, right, I'll just drop that item off for today and then I'll return back another day and then drop the other one off. Like you're trying to post separate letters into a post box on different days. Why not just do it all in one? In fact, better still, why even bother returning the items? It almost implies that there's some kind of conscience, some kind of guilt going on. You know, Jim Brenner, that's what it's likely, you know, being linked to. You get me? Yeah. If Brenner was calling the family, which is the case, there's a reason for that. If Brenner was the one returning the key fob and the gun back to the trailer, it's like some kind of guilt. It's playing on his mind. Normally, in a situation, if you have done something bad to someone, you're trying to move on, forget about the past and what's happened, just move on like that. You could say it's like a psychopath almost, some kind of serial killer. But from Brenner's actions and reactions, he doesn't appear as a killer. I may be wrong, I'm just basing it off what I know of and his past history. Violence, hurting people, but not putting people in the ground. So I think with this possible new experience, it's led to him acting a bit strange, right? That's the way I see it. Another important point that needs to be mentioned is that the boots of Dylan's, which were found at the dirt mound, had Brenner's DNA on them. That's very important, right? You know, considering what was previously said, that Brenner supposedly hadn't seen Dylan for over a month, but then also claiming that he saw Dylan place the boots down at the dirt mound. Contradictions made there. So he must be hiding something, lying in some way, with the lies in the polygraph test as well. I guess it all fits together, right? I know some people might have been already aware, but, you know, it just strengthens it, the situation. The fact that Brenner's DNA is on the boots could be one of two things. Brenner was responsible for disposing of evidence associated with Dylan's outcome, or Brenner was responsible for taking Dylan out at the same time when the boots were taken off. You might be wondering, well, why? You know, why would the boots need to have been taken off? From the looks of it, they were pulled off, obviously, right? If Brenner's DNA is on the boots, he touched them. I don't know if he wore them because he wanted Dylan's boots, or if it's just simply, I'm pulling them off, possibly in a scuffle, the fighting, like Brenner's like grabbing hold of Dylan maybe by the legs. I don't know. Sounds weird, right? Doesn't it? Because if you're going to kill someone, then why do you need to take certain clothing off them before or after? You know, it don't quite really add up. But in terms of this behaviour, what we've seen of the gun and the key fob being returned on different days, that's unusual in itself, right? I mean, we need to link back, the fact that the gun doesn't have really any DNA on it and it was cleaned before being returned, there was some thought going on in Brenner's head, right? One way to interpret it would be Brenner, aside from guilt, may have returned the items back to make it not seem as suspicious to try and reduce the heat level. And you could say, well, that's not going to work, duh. But in his mind, it might have, right? Okay. As for the boots, being found at the dirt mound with having DNA on them linked with Brenner, those boots weren't cleaned. Evidence was on them. So why did Brenner clean the gun but not clean the boots off DNA? Bit odd. Picking and choosing certain things. Another factor, potential to take in mind to explain Brenner's kind of unusual actions and behaviour is he may have been drunk. He might have been drunk at the time. And there is a thing where sometimes when people are drunk, they don't remember what they've done afterwards, right? Also, sometimes when people are drunk, they can get aggressive. I've seen it firsthand, and you see it in public. People can get aggressive when it comes to alcohol. And because of that, it could have been on the day Brenner was drunk, might have been in a mood. Dylan might have just said one thing or said, hey, can you move this? Can you move that? And Brenner snapped. In a drunken fit of rage, Brenner killed Dylan. With what item? Maybe the gun, or maybe it was another object. Who knows, right? And then at the same time, the boots were taken off. Brenner, being drunk, not being fully there with it, decided to just fling them, chuck them. When you chuck something, it's because there's a lack of care involved, not taking things into mind. So he just chucks them behind the mound, thinking that's good enough. No one's going to find them. And then let's say after that, Brenner goes to Dylan's truck, possibly. He's already got the key fob off Dylan or from the trailer, unlocks the vehicle. It might be in the process of disposing Dylan. We've got to take that into mind as well. Brenner does notice that Dylan's gun is in the truck, like on the door side, when you get the little pockets. He might take it immediately or afterwards, post disposing of Dylan. Took the gun, locked the car, the seat previously been adjusted for him to be able to drive the vehicle and setting it to all-wheel drive. Unusual behaviour, but to him, normal in a sense that he's not aware of Dylan's habits, what Dylan actually does, where he stores things. If Brenner knew Dylan in and out, then Brenner probably would have adjusted the seat backwards, turned all-wheel drive off, and placed the gun back in the truck and not in the trailer. But he's not thinking it through because he's not a mastermind, like Candice Cooley said. And also, if he's drunk, he's not going to be thinking straight when it comes to retracing one's tracks, one's steps. Did I clean this? Did I clean that? Did I return the gun back in the right place? Did I make sure that the door was open and not closed? Lots of tiny little things which need to be almost replicated, 100% accuracy, as if Dylan would do things and operate on a day-to-day basis. It's hard to do. And if you throw in alcohol, that can make you forget things afterwards. So possibly Brenner might have remembered the odd thing, what he's done, and thought, oh shit, oh no, what have I done? Oh no, I've really gone past the boundaries now. And that's what caused him to return the gun. Because if he's got the gun on him, along with the key fob, even if he's forgotten what he did the day before, let's say, because of having those actual objects in his hands, in his possession, that will serve as a reminder and make him think, oh, I need to return them back before anyone finds out. That's one way of interpreting it. The boots, he's probably not going to remember. The boots are long gone, chucked over there. Does that make sense? Okay, that's just one way of looking at it. I want to try and make it as precise as possible and short. I don't want to talk too long about these points. You can look into it deeper if you want, or you can replay the video back to try and make sense of things if it's a little bit unclear, okay? but hopefully you're sticking with me at this moment in time, okay? So, with all those bits of important information, specifically the items being returned on different days, which is odd in itself, the detectives and how they responded to Candice was they weren't really interested. They shook their heads. Kind of strange. Oh well. Like that. And it's like, are you sure? This is serious. Whoever has returned these items at the time could be the suspect. So why don't you check the items for DNA, forensics, and get to the bottom of it? And obviously the detectives aren't proactive. They're like, oh well. So that's delaying and halting yet more potential leads and progression to be made to cause a successful conviction down the line. Does that make sense? Okay. Now, all that was mentioned above from what Candice said in that interview up to now was 3 months old information. 3 months ago this occurred. So you can see how long, right? How long? And we've only just started hearing about it now. As I said, understandably, it makes sense to why we've not heard most of it, aside from the key fob, as that was a slip-up by the LE releasing it publicly, because I guess of building a case, building evidence along the way, as we've heard recently by Cade Palmer, one of the Box Elder County guys, who said, we've got a strong case now, associating it with Brenner, okay? So hopefully that makes sense, right? It's understandable that Candice was holding back then, because although she might hate the LE or just simply frustrated by how they've acted, you know, she's still holding back to make sure and to ensure that Dylan gets justice, right? Even if you want to scream and shout, it's holding back. But obviously people have different tolerance levels and breaking points, and at a point in time for most people there's a moment where enough is enough, and then you start taking matters into your own hand or revealing stuff, because if you don't, it'll just build and build within and it doesn't help, you know. So moving on, later in Candice Cooley's interview with Doug, Candice said the quote, "If the bloodhounds weren't called off by the LE, we would have found our son. Blood is on their hands." She's referring to LE, Box Elder County. What we've previously heard by Candice Cooley is Box Elder County did call off the bloodhound group, the dogs, because of it raining, and they said it's only a 20% chance of success at the time trying to find Dylan. Now, after hearing that back then, it was like, once again, being let down, resources that are present and usable being either taken away, delayed, prevented, and it's like, what good does that do? Even if it's only a 20% chance that Dylan could be found by the dogs, it's better than a 0% chance, right? And the actual quotes, what I just read out just then, what she said, very strong words and lines, but most likely very true, I guess. You know, if there was a chance of finding Dylan then, most likely then would have been the time, because it was early on, things would have been more fresh, not as much weathering back then. It's relevant to the time of when Dylan went missing, so as much resources should have been used and could have been used back then to get the best outcome, arguably speaking. But because a specific group known as Box Elder County prevented that from happening, it's kind of on their hands, right? And on top of that, to reinforce the whole blood on their hands, if you take in mind what Box Elder County should have done in 2021, arresting Brenner, and even should have arrested Brenner at the start of this case, okay? More so back in 2021, if LE did their job, Dylan would still be alive today, most likely, right? Because with all the evidence up to now and information, it seems to be definitely strengthening and leaning in on Jim Brenner being the main guy for taking out Dylan. And obviously, if Brenner was not present because he was in jail, if that happened in 2021, Dylan wouldn't have been attacked by him and Dylan would be okay. So it's kind of justified to why Candice Cooley does come out with the line, blood on their hands. Yeah. And the bit about where she said we would have found our son if the bloodhounds were used back then. Yeah, there's a possibility. I don't know if it's a 100% guarantee, but there's a higher possibility of it happening then rather than now. Then again, with the use of the drone, the full spectral one, for soil disturbance, that could be used as an alternative now to finding Dylan. But it's like, it's too late though, isn't it? If there was any chance, any possibility that Dylan was alive somehow back at the start, then those bloodhounds could have located him and found him alive instead of a drone finding his remains. That is one way of looking at it. Leave your thoughts in the chat. I don't know if I'll do a poll. I might do. Do you think that the LE Box Elder County, they have blood on their hands? That Dylan, in a way, Dylan's disappearance, Dylan going missing, Dylan's potential death is linked in some way to the LE, and that the LE are to blame for it. Leave your thoughts down below, okay? Now, next key point moving on to, and it's to do with Chase Venstre, Robert Aviles. From what's been previously said, Robert Aviles was seen less of a suspect than Chase Venstre, and it's kind of been back and forth questioning who's who, where were they, you know, that type of stuff. And I guess in recent time, Robert Aviles was excused because of where he was. He was elsewhere. Chase Venstre, from what's been said recently about being in Ogden on the 28th at 10 p.m. or so at Little Caesars, eating a pizza. And it was like, okay, that excuses his, gives him an alibi, right? I was still kind of questioning though, thinking, what about earlier on in the day? What happened? Well, from what Candice Cooley had to say in the interview with Doug yesterday, Candice said that every ping of their phones, both Chase Venstre and Robert Aviles, all the cameras and CCTV footage of them individually, all proved that Chase Venstre and Robert Aviles was nowhere near the area of where Dylan went missing throughout the whole day. So that seems like very strong, like, you know, like really reinforcing that those two are off the list. But at the same time, people are still alike, and like Doug, they're not, you know, dismissing anyone yet. And even from what the LE have said, they're not dismissing people. They're still taking others into mind. So there is that possibility. But from the way Candice worded it, that she strongly thinks, strongly knows that Robert Aviles and Chase Venstre have nothing to do with Dylan's disappearance because they weren't in the area at the time. So it's like, okay, there we go. I still think, is there a possibility that Chase Venstre might know something? Not that he was present, but he might have been told something afterwards, or he heard from someone about the outcome of Dylan. That's the only thing I can think of, because although it was mentioned about Chase briefly in the interview, what wasn't mentioned was the polygraph test and the questions. That is still unknown of. And it's important because if you know the questions and you know which question it was Chase Venstre lied on, that could open up a new lead. It could tie up loose ends. It could definitely explain something, but that wasn't mentioned in the interview, okay? Just want to make that clear. Now, tying on from that stuff about Chase Venstre and Robert Aviles, Candice was mentioning that she thinks that Montello want them out of the place, that Montello dislike Chase Venstre and Robert Avilés. Possibility, both individuals have been in Montello. I don't know if they've ever lived in Montello, but they've visited on multiple occasions at different times in the past as well, okay? But because both Chase Venstre and Robert Avilés have been known for burglary, stealing things, if that's impacted the locals, then I can understand to why Montello locals don't like those two guys and they want them out of the town, banished, thrown away. Same happened with Jim Brenner. You see that pattern? Brenner, known for causing trouble, attacking people, being a disturbance towards the neighbourhood, being seen as a threat to the community and public people. So he was pushed away. Possibility that he might have been living in Montello at some point. Ed Harshberger assisted with Brenner in moving him on. At one point, trailer in Montello, but further out of the town. After that being burnt down, then being sent over to Lucin, and I think that was the help of Ed Hirschberger. Okay, so same could happen with Chase and Robert. Just that idea that you're not welcome in the town because of how you've been in the past with your behaviour, and that's understandable. Now, is there a possibility that Montello locals are biased towards some of these guys like Chase and Robert? Possibly. It might reinforce to why they might have placed the blame or assumed that it was Chase or Robert that was responsible for Dylan's disappearance. If already you've previously heard about Kurt Wadsworth phoning in saying, oh, the likes of Robert Avilés and Chase Venstre have Dylan held hostage in a building in Montello, it kind of shapes how things are, how they just jump to conclusions and assume that those two guys are responsible because they've done bad stuff in the past and that there's a grudge. Is what I said. The possibility that within the Dylan Brown's case, somewhere or another, there might be a grudge somewhere which influences certain behaviour, and I think that's what we're kind of seeing from what Candice has said about Montello and the locals, okay? Now, the next point mentioned is Candice was saying how the police have called out the Rounds family, called out Candice, saying Candice is hard to deal with. That type of stuff, that the Rounds family, such as Candice and Justin, are causing too much, traction, too much friction. That's what it was, causing too much friction, I guess, vocally, talking too much, complaining, whinging, whining. But it's that reality of the only reason why Candice and the likes of Justin may be that way, and the reason why Candice could be hard to deal with when it comes to listening, communication, is because they've had enough of how the LE have previously treated the family. Sure, certain information can't be revealed, so there might be restrictions in communication, but what could be said is, we're making new leads, but we can't discuss it with you at this time because, we're trying to build a case. Just those small, subtle hints, not too much revealed, but just kind of like an update on things regularly, right? Because it is the family at the end of the day. But because that's been lacking, as well as all the other trouble that's gone on and what we've heard and talked about, as well as the mocking and joking, it's a complete mess. It's bound to piss the family off. So the family start reacting back negatively in some way. It makes sense to why. And really, the police aren't in a position to be calling out the family, as being hard to deal with. It's hard to cooperate with the police with how they've been. So you can flip it back. So really, I guess if the police weren't messing around at the beginning, the LE, then the family would be easier to deal with. That's the way I see it. You can leave your thoughts down below if you think different, okay? Now, what next? So still, no one is cleared. That's another key point mentioned, such as the family and everybody else in the case. And it's like, well, why? Why has it been left like that? probably neglected, just like how bits of evidence has been neglected in the past. Lack of interest, lack of care, and that's simply it, right? Next point that was mentioned, what Candice said. So, since no one has been cleared, the likes of Ty Corbyn, and this is what Candice Cooley said, Ty Corbyn previously made a lie, claiming that the likes of Robert Avilés was cleared by the FBI. But that never happened, as no one to this day has been cleared off the case. So Candice said Ty lied. And I don't know how you interpret that, but that's just what Candice has said. The only way I could try and understand it is maybe Ty is looking out for Robert Avilés, trying to reduce the heat level off Avilés, because he might genuinely be innocent, from what Candice has said earlier on in that interview. And just by making the odd lie to just clear his name quicker, because they are friends, supposedly, Ty and Robert. So kind of like looking out for each other at times. You know, there's those occasions where if you're friends or if you're very close to someone and they're tied up in a case and you know they're innocent, but there might be a certain procedure that names aren't cleared, there's still questioning that needs to go ahead, and you might jump the queue and just simply say, oh, no, he's innocent, he's not done anything wrong, the end. And that might well be the case, but, there's still certain procedures to follow. Now, understandably, it's more awkward and messy in this case because things have been dragged out. Stuff that should have been done hasn't, like clearing the names. So in a way, Ty's done that instead of the LE. But it's still a lie in Candice's mind back then. And to some people that might hear this, people may get a little bit suspicious of Ty and think he's lying about other stuff as well. So I'll just leave it there, okay? I'm not saying it. It's what Candice has said and how other humans could react to it, okay? That's all I'm going to say. Now, the next point. Box Elder County said they are providing counselling sessions with the Rounds family, such as the mother. Candice was like, no, I don't want it. We've gone through enough already together as a family, got friends, got close people, doing okay at this moment in time. Candice said she still doesn't trust Box Elder County. Don't blame them, don't blame her. As for Box Elder County providing that counselling, is it going to be genuine? Is it going to be professional? Or is that going to be slightly corrupt? Because just imagine if you are broken, if you are lost and you do need help or someone to talk to, Box Elder County reach out, you talk to them, you share personal information, private thoughts and feelings, and then what? Box Elder County accidentally share that information publicly, or they don't follow up later with another meeting. There's no stability. So if you rely on them and they're incompetent, you're going to be left in the dark. You're going to be suffering even more down the line. Wouldn't surprise me. And if Box Elder County, some of them within are known for mocking and joking about family, if some of those family members did start talking privately to them with the counselling, there might be more mockery and ridiculing. So it could get very nasty psychologically. So whilst people are out there with services to provide help, it's not always helpful. That's the dark reality, okay? The next point, Candice Cooley talking about the whole rabbit hole. It's easy to go down the rabbit hole in cases, especially like with the Dylan Rounds one. Now, I don't know how she was getting at it, because I don't know if she was saying that even if you cover the rabbit hole and it's not right, it's not true, it's still good because you're raising Dylan's awareness, keeping the case alive. I don't know if she was talking about that, or she was just simply saying that it's easy for YouTubers to go off this route, go down here with no information, no real facts, and just waste time with the case. I don't know which one she was referring to, right? All I can say, my response is, one can only think a certain way, one can only react and cover information and ideas in a specific way based on the material and information one has. If all the information isn't presented, you're not going to get a full understanding of the case, right? You might misinterpret stuff. There might be certain important conditions, dates, times, key information which could excuse one thing or reinforce another. And if you're limited, you can only think to an extent. And then for the rest of it, you might make up with interpretations and theories. Like with the Kenny Veach case, only so much information, only so many cards to deal with. Once they've been covered, once you try to make sense of them, whether it leads to a cliffhanger, a dead end, you branch out and think of alternative thoughts and ideas until the real information comes along. The likes of Candice Cooley would have been the most knowledgeable on the case, as she's behind the scenes. She knows a lot of information from obviously what we've heard, but she couldn't reveal it back then because of the case. And only now she's started revealing stuff, just like a few months ago where she might have revealed a few other bits and bobs, drip feeding as we go along based on the process and sticking to it. So you can't really blame YouTubers for going down the rabbit hole, okay? They've only got so much information to work with, right? If the information was all thrown out at the beginning, let's just say that was possible, all the information provided like that, and then people started going off on one and going on about all these wild, weird theories, and you could say it's unnecessary, but that's not been the case, right? So, as I said, I don't know if she's praising people for going down the rabbit hole for spreading awareness with Dylan, or she's simply saying that people that do go down the rabbit hole know nothing and aren't helping. I guess it's open to interpretation, right? Okay. So moving on, the next point is in relation back to the grain shed and the supposed scene of the crime. From what Candice said, that nothing was ever deemed as a crime scene, whether it be the dirt mound, the grain shed, the trailer, Dylan's place of living. No environments, no locations were seen as a crime scene. As Candice has previously stated, there was no tape, nothing was cornered off, so it enabled everyday people to go onto the land, explore, investigate for themselves, which could have led to evidence being tampered with, additional items being buried for whatever reason, like no holds barred, right? In most cases, if there's a crime scene, there'll be tape, there might be cameras, an active patrol. From my experience nearby, when a person went missing way back in the past, we never knew of. Recently in the news, well, not recent now, but months ago, a body was supposedly found, or there was some kind of tip-off, and whilst they were exhuming the area, trying to unearth the body or evidence, police were like 24 hours in the area with tape on patrol, making sure no one walks through the area and contaminates or ruins the evidence. Okay, that patrol, that level of security, which was lacking in the Dylan Rounds case. So the likes of Salty Pancakes, Kurt Wadsworth and others, were allowed to go on the land and do whatever. Still, credit to Pancakes for providing that footage. You can't dismiss that. I understand other people won't think too highly of Pancakes because of other reasons. Okay, yeah, I'll take that into mind too, right? But yeah, that's the situation there, the whole lack of a crime scene, which is a lack of professionalism, right? Not good. What else? So the next point which needs to be mentioned is Candice did refer back to the Wadsworths later on in the interview, and she stated but there is zero evidence pointing at the Wadsworths, but they're still bad people. That's what Candice said. I assume that's referring to the likes of Troy and Scott Wadsworth with their past criminal history and treatment towards certain people of a certain age, but in addition, recent time of Kurt's behaviour. Candice Cooley stated in the interview that the likes of Kurt Wadsworth and the daughter have been paid by YouTubers to do interviews. I don't know how much, but that would have encouraged the likes of Kurt Wadsworth and the daughter to be quite active, talkative, whether it be being volatile, causing a lot of drama, just talking a lot of shit, or just saying a lot, causing a lot of noise as much as possible because they're getting paid and they'll take advantage of that. I don't know how true it is, but that's what Candice said. Leave your thoughts down below because that's quite important, that the likes of Kurt and the daughter supposedly getting paid by YouTubers. Who do you think those YouTubers are? And why did the YouTubers have to pay Kurt Wadsworth and the daughter to come on and talk when the likes of Doug from No Thanks, Zav Girl with her interviews, the Mob Crew interviewing Candice as well was all free of charge? There's something definitely going on, right? Money is involved, and the likes of Kurt probably won't pass an offer like that, I guess. Okay, quite a lot to process. What we need to do is, if you're new to my channel right now, welcome. If you just simply joined recently to this live video premiere, welcome. I will reiterate some very important points now to rejog some people's memories if you've already forgotten, and to help others who may still be confused or didn't hear what was mentioned earlier on in this video. Bear in mind, you can also replay this video afterwards to fully understand, okay? But basically, what was talked about earlier on in this video are key summarised points from the Candice Cooley interview yesterday with Doug from No Thanks. Candice revealing a lot of important information which has been held back over time due to the whole investigation and case. But obviously it's got to that point where it's like, enough is enough, time to reveal important facts and information, okay? One of them was to do with, in recent time, and I guess in the past, whilst Jim Brenner has been in prison or custody, he's made outward phone calls to the Dylan Rounds family, the mother, the father, etc. The calls were never answered. I don't know exactly why, but who knows why Brenner was making those calls. Was it to confess because he felt guilty, or maybe trying to play mind games? Most likely guilt, from how Candice Cooley has stated it, and with Brenner's behaviour and how he acts. He snaps. So it's like a heat of a moment situation. So he might regret doing something he did previously. That type of thing, okay? The next part of important information, which was discussed earlier on, was almost like the timeline of how things followed, okay? How things unravelled, and how key items, pieces of evidence emerged over time, right? And from what Candice Cooley said, she said on day 1, May 30th, search and rescue found Dylan's boots behind the dirt mound, okay, with a black spot on it. Day 2, Kurt Wadsworth called the Rounds family, claiming that Dylan's been held hostage in Montello by Chase Venstra and Robert Aviles. Obviously, a false lead in the end. Candice Cooley also said on that day, when Kurt made the call to the Rounds family, earlier on in the day, Justin was coming back from Montello after putting the 20k reward out there, whether it be putting posters up or announcing it to the locals of Montello saying, hey, here's a 20k reward if you have any information leading to Dylan's whereabouts. You know, that. And isn't it kind of coincidental how on the same day as announcing that reward money, Kurt instantly calls up and like, hey, I know where Dylan's at. Opportunistic behaviour, okay? What we do need to take in mind, though, is that the reason Kurt called the family with that information is because he previously got a call from a psychic. I don't know who that psychic is. I don't know if they're in Montello or from afar, but they called Kurt, and then I guess Kurt saw the dollar signs and thought, well, this information, this must be it. I could get 20k now if I phone the family. Right, I'm going to do that. So you see that opportunistic behaviour. Fast forward to what we've heard about Kurt and the daughter appearing on YouTube channels and getting paid. No wonder why they've been vocal, because they're getting money. So more opportunistic behaviour. They might not be involved in Dylan's disappearance, but they're milking it, possibly. Okay? Now, in addition, another reason to why someone like Kurt and the odd locals might have reached out to the family of Dylan's is because they're trying to set Chase up or Robert both at the same time, as they were the ones who were supposedly being labelled as the ones taking Dylan hostage. So that, once again, that possible grievances, decrees with Chase and Robert Avalos. So like killing two birds with one stone, right? Get the 20k reward money and also blame Chase and Robert for it. So you benefit financially and you also get rid of bad eggs in the neighbourhood, right? That's one way of looking at it. Day number 3, okay? That's when Dylan's pistol, the one that was missing, was finally returned on the camper seat. So inside of the trailer on the seat. The gun itself was wiped clean of evidence. There was no evidence found. So, you know, trying to hide stuff. Day number 4 is when the key fob was returned to the camper in the same exact place as where the gun was found the day beforehand. Very odd, right? So it does make you wonder, why did the individual, likely Brenner, return the items back, and why was it one at a time? Doesn't quite make sense. Is it because they're playing a game? Or is it because they're not quite thinking straight? They don't know how to act because they may have not been in a situation like this before, killing someone. Different ways of interpreting it, right? And as well, originally, as said, I thought Kurt Wadsworth could have been responsible because of the whole phone call and decoy situation of getting the family and the police attention, dragging him all the way down to Montello, leaving it open and quiet for either Kurt or somebody else to then go down to the trailer and place the items there. But obviously that's not the case, because when the items were returned, it was a day after the call was made, right? And as well, the items were returned back on different days, so there was no real rush, right? So, leave your thoughts, your reactions to that, as well as the other information provided down below earlier on, okay? Now, anything else? Yes. So, with the whole supposed crime scene, which was never actually officially a crime scene, such as Dylan's truck, and I assume it's the Ford F-150, okay, Dylan's main truck, not the grain truck, but Dylan's truck, which was found at his place of living, his farm, which also had the power washer cable pipe on the ground wrapped around the outside of the car, as if it's been power washed. We've heard about that. We've also heard about the car door being locked, which normally it never would be. It being set into all-wheel drive, which it shouldn't be because Dylan knows it doesn't work. right? So with that situation, at the time of it all unraveling, trying to make sense of Dylan's disappearance very early on, and we said about Candice breaking entry to the vehicle to either drive it somewhere or to search the vehicle for any evidence. Supposedly, Candice isn't to blame because there was no crime scene, nothing official, so I guess it's like, do whatever you want. And that's what was quoted from what Candice said with the response of Box Elder County. Box Elder County said, do whatever you want, do what needs to be done. So it's like, there's no restrictions, no limitations, I can do whatever I want. Now I know you could argue and say, well, just use your brain, common sense, and not touch anything whatsoever. I guess that's one way of looking at it. You know, sometimes you don't always have to be told what to do and what not to do, just use your own brain. But depending on the situation and how the people impacted are feeling at the time, if they get some kind of reassurance, green tick by authority, by it's okay, then they most likely will do that. Okay, you've got to think of the psychological effect authority can have over people below them. Okay, so with that, Candice obviously broke into the vehicle and then drove the truck either back home to theirs or somewhere else. But in the process, all the data off the black box, I think you call it that, all the data from Dylan's vehicle, such as the distance, the mileage, and maybe even the names of the locations and roads of where that vehicle has been taken to, was all wiped. All that information gone. How? Because from what Candice said, the information that's stored is from the last 100 miles. After that, you do any more mileage, it'll clear the previous data. Okay? So that's very unfortunate, and they weren't even aware of that. I guess it was due to the brand and make of vehicle. They weren't aware. Now, just imagine if that data was never wiped. That information on the vehicle itself could have provided an understanding of whether that vehicle was used at the time of Dylan's disappearance or not. And if it was, then it would explain to why obviously the door was locked, why the seat was adjusted, and whilst it was set to all-wheel drive. That possibility that that's the case, Brenner at the time might have used Dylan's vehicle for some reason, placed Dylan in the back of the truck, the back seat, wherever, and drove off somewhere off-road to dispose of Dylan. And if that data was still present to this day, it might have shared the location, the coordinates, the mileage. Who knows what kind of information that comes from it. And that might have revealed where Dylan was at and is at to this day. Kind of a dark thought, but there is a possibility, right? Now, any other little bits and bobs of information? Well, Candice was saying June the 6th, that's when the boots were taken to the lab. June the 8th was when they were told about the blood on the boots. Okay, just a little bit of information there. So that's it, okay? There was other things talked about, but it was more to do with either repeating previous things or just talking about other stuff which isn't as, well, if I say isn't as important, that could appear as being rude, but you get what I'm saying. The really key, critical, important points I've mentioned just then. The other stuff was like talking about donating to EquiSearch, about the drone, about the interview with Heavy D coming soon, and then just a bit of like joking and talking about life and about reaching out to other people down the line to help other families impacted by situations like this, talking about health, talking about, you know, just everyday stuff. Okay, so hopefully that makes sense. As I said, if you do want to see the whole video, the interview, the faces, the body language, the audio, the voices, everything like that, then you can go on Doug's channel. I'll provide a link down below in the comment section pinned. but hopefully this video summarised that video fairly well and it was explained okay, and hopefully you understood it. If not, feel free to replay the video again. If that's not helpful, just go back to Doug's channel and hear it that way, okay? Bear in mind, the interview over there was 3 hours and 14 minutes long. And I had to sit there and watch it all and then make notes at the same time. Took quite a while, okay? I don't know how long this video is, but I'm sure it's shorter than 3 hours, 14 minutes. I hope so, because it is supposed to be a summary. Additionally, supposedly, whether it be today, later on, you've got to take in consideration the time zone difference between the US and the UK. The UK are ahead of the US. So by the time a supposed interview with Ned Eaton and Candice Cooley and maybe Justin from the East Idaho News Channel, that will be coming soon, okay? I'll probably hear about it tomorrow, whilst you will hear about it today, if that makes sense. Bear in mind, time zone difference. It'll probably be talking about the same things. It might be worded a little differently. Time will tell, but I think most of the important information was mentioned from yesterday's stream in Doug's, which was about 13 to 14 hours ago. Bear in mind, time difference with different countries, okay? So, if you have any questions, additional points, anything whatsoever, make sure to leave a comment down below. Understandably, because these are live premieres, most of the communication occurs in the chat, right? Ongoing as we're talking now. But it is appreciated if you do leave comments down below as well, whether it be to share additional information or additional questions, because it just helps keeps the case active and helps spread awareness indirectly, okay? So that's it for now. I hope you, in a way, enjoyed the video, and I'll see you for the next one. Does it prevent certain videos being made? Arguably, yes. Like with the whole Chase Ventura situation, I was thinking of graveyards, I was thinking of Elko County, associations with that, visiting. From what's been talked about in this video and certain names being cleared, it's probably best sticking to that. So there is any locations to be covered, whether it be next time or the time after, it will be uploaded in a format not associated with Dylan, okay? Such as looking at motels, possible locations of where previously under the impression that a suspect might have gone to, okay? Like with Ogden, what we previously looked at. This time round, it won't be, oh yeah, maybe Chase went here, Chase went there, Dylan came here. No, because then it would be inappropriate. I'll do it as a standalone video, can still do the wacky, dodgy stuff, okay? That doesn't change. But in terms of the relevancy to the case, it's not linked as much. You can still link it indirectly in your own mind, but in terms of the title, the description, it won't say Dylan Rounds on it, because it, with the information of what we have now, if I did a video like that now, with associating Dylan in the title, then it would seem like I'm hijacking the case, hijacking the mystery. It doesn't sound or look good, obviously, interpreted as misinformation. All the fake accounts already given me a bad name, then they've got more ammunition. So you got to think ahead, okay? So there's any wacky, dodgy videos, they're not associated with Dylan, okay? Putting that forwards right now. There are still videos to do on the Dylan Rounds case, definitely, okay? I can still look at Jim Brenner and Dylan. We could even try and break it down to try and understand his patterns, his behaviour, his movements on the day Dylan went missing and stuff like that, and the whole calling Brenner earlier on in the day, that can still be done. I guess we're kind of homing in on Jim Brenner related videos at this moment in time, if that makes sense. I wouldn't be surprised though if there are any twists or turns down the line, whether it be another suspect comes out, an accomplice, can't say it, or any other weird information, because, you know, it keeps switching and changing, so things could be reversed, who knows. just expect anything, I would say, okay? So yes, that's it for now. Thanks for watching. I will see you next time. For now, good night and goodbye.